They don't make them much more dominant than what Ohio State just did to Western Michigan inside this building on Saturday night. That's the 41-year vet Tim May. That's Andy Baxter. I'm Spencer Holbrook. And wow, what a dominant 56-0 performance by Ohio State. The first shutout in 5 exact years. The last shutout, September 7th, 2019 against Cincinnati. That one was 42-0. This one was 56-0. Tim, your opening thoughts from Ohio State 56, Western Michigan 0 in a game that felt like it was 1,000,000,000 to 0.
I think Ohio State righted a lot of wrongs from last week when they didn't get off to a very good start, and teetered into a 17-3 halftime lead.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm getting to here is this team started and finished tonight. I mean, the second half was almost as impressive as the first half in a lot of ways, because I don't think Western Michigan might have had 26 total yards in the second half. It was some ungodly low number. They finished with 99 total yards, which is unbelievable. But then Ohio State had almost 700 yards total offense, 686 until who was that? Lincoln Keno's took a knee at the end of the game and -3. But about as dominant as you can be, with a few exceptions, against a team you were 38-point favored against, and just dominated from beginning to end. I know I keep saying dominant because that's the only other word that comes to mind.
Yeah.
And it could have been worse for Western Michigan.
Yeah, it's the first time since 2017 that Ohio State's held an opponent to under 100 total yards of offense. So that's even longer since the first shutout since 2019. So it's been a minute. And you know what? This defense played really hard from start to finish, and they had Cody Simon back in the fold, the middle linebacker who missed the opener. Said it was just a nagging lower body issue sometime in camp. They didn't play him in the first game, but he played tonight, and he made his impact known from right away. I think it was a third down sack he had on a blitz that Jim Knowles sent him on.
Yeah.
And then he also had a pass deflection soon after that in the first quarter. So they got their leader back and the defense, and they played like it the whole game.
Yeah, it was very, very impressive from the defense. I asked Jack Sawyer after the game, I said, what's more impressive, less than 100 yards of total offense or 0 points? And he said, that's a good question. I think he said the yards. I'll have that covered at lettermenrow.com. But I walk away from this game, Will Howard, 10 of 10 to start. The running backs, the two-headed monster, 4 touchdowns between those two, just an incredible performance. I think you predicted 3 touchdowns between them, so We'll give you half credit for that since they didn't get to 200 yards, but they would have if they wanted to, and they would have if Quinshon Judkins' 80-yard touchdown run didn't get called back for a holding penalty.
Well, that hurt
but
me.
As impressive as the offense was, this defense was dead set on a shutout at some point. And, 3 points, 2 games in a row last year against Minnesota and Michigan State. 3 points in the opener last year against an Indiana team that didn't even seem to try to move the ball on them. Still mustered 3 points. This was a long time coming. 6 points last week against Akron in a game that they were not happy about, giving up that first field goal. The second field goal, maybe, but that first field goal they were really angry about.
Yeah.
To come out here and actually finish the job and get it done heading into the off week, I thought it was really impressive. And again, Tim, you used last week the word businesslike to talk about the way that this team handled last week and the way that it didn't start how it wanted to, but it took care of business.
Right.
This not just was a you-know-what kicking. It was businesslike in the way that they did it. It was methodical, it was surgical, it was clinical, and it was all business for 60 minutes, and I thought that was the most impressive thing. And I know, guys, it's Western Michigan, but, this was impressive. This is the number 2 team in the country.
Yeah. Well, bottom line, I agree with you 100%. Obviously, Western Michigan missed a field goal.
Yeah.
Not a chip shot field goal, but missed a field goal kind of poorly. But that was their one shot to really do it. And I remember talking to the guys sitting next to me. I said, "This is why you don't pick a shutout right here. This is this moment." And then the guy misses the field goal, and I felt so much better because Ohio State defensively, almost every team I've ever covered has 1 or 2 series in a game where the other team just kind of figures it out for one sequence. And that was Western Michigan's moment, and they blew it and didn't get the field goal. But, I'm going back, though. I mean, there are a lot of guys that played great on defense tonight. This was a 38-point underdog they were playing and made them look a lot worse than that. And we talked about this. I talked about this on the radio show. You talked about in pregame radio show. You talked about this last week as we were talking. It is really tough for Western Michigan to come off playing at Wisconsin, where it's going to be a physical game for you, and come into Ohio Stadium, a Wisconsin game that theoretically they were in until they blew it themselves with the screw up on the punt catch, and where the ball hits a Western Michigan guy, and Wisconsin recovers and gets new life. This one, they were never in this game.
No.
And they got beat up a little bit last week. That's what happens to these MAC schools. They can put a first team out there that can play with almost anybody, but not a second team.
Yeah.
And I think you saw that tonight. I mean, there were a lot of guys that were really breathing hard at the end of the game there for Western Michigan on the offense and the defense, and the offense hardly played in the second half.
Yeah. Let's get to that two-headed beast that you wrote about at LettermenRow.com in the game grades. Man, we were promised a two-time All-SEC tailback.
Yeah.
And a two-time All-SEC tailback we got tonight. That was – I was here when Travion had 277. I was here – I've been here for some J.K. Dobbins performances, the 4 touchdowns at Michigan. If you put that 80-yard touchdown run up on the board, that's 188 yards rushing and some of the most impressive runs I've seen. Like, this was ridiculous from Quinshon Judkins, and the stat sheet doesn't quite show how great he was tonight.
Yeah, I believe the line I used was, Tylee Williams told us this week that it's a two-headed monster.
This is really good, Tim.
Monsters come out at night, right, Tim?
Yeah.
And they were out tonight, and both of them, Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, were great. I also thought maybe the most encouraging thing for Ohio State fans tonight is the blocking. I thought it was much better compared to week one, especially on the perimeter. And that's where you bust open those big runs. Quinshon Judkins had 2 23-yard touchdown runs. And the first one, it was Josh Fryer swinging all the way out and using that quickness that he gained this offseason, really, making the block in the second level to climb up, paved the way for that touchdown. The second touchdown for Quinshon was also 23 yards. And again, it was the offensive lineman, but this time it was Austin Saravelt going up to the second level and taking out a safety to pave the way for another touchdown. So I thought the blocking, and Patrick Gerd was in there. The blocking in general was much better from the Ohio State offensive line, but also the receivers and the tight ends today. There was one play where Carnell Tate just completely pancaked his guy all the way off to the sideline. So I thought the blocking across the board was better, and that's a huge positive sign for this team.
And we knew Brian Hartline was going to bring that up, this past week, because it wasn't as good as it could have been a week ago against Akron. I'm talking about the wide receiver blocking, and everybody got into it. And you just think about this game, and me, I've got to recycle that 4 straight touchdowns or 4 straight scores on their first 4 possessions. I got to recycle that again in 2 weeks against March. I'm going to recycle it because I think it's going to happen. It should have happened tonight because the Quinshon Judkins callback was on the 4th possession, and then when Will Howard kind of pulled the string on that deep ball to Jeremiah Smith, I think people have heard of him by now. Wow. That could have been a touchdown, obviously. Then they didn't score, and there goes Tim May's bold pick, but it was so much closer this week than it was a week ago. But as Will Howard said, they still left meat on the bone. And as I said to him, that must be a hell of a bone, as he left the press conference, because 683 total yards, the touchdowns they got, but they still punted a couple of times. I know that it's
that irks them, Tim.
But it's literally they stopped themselves a couple of times. Is really what it was. I mean, the holding call on Quinshon Judkins' run, but Judkins ran. He was different tonight.
Mm-hmm.
He, like I asked him, I'm seeing it from where I'm seeing it. He's seeing it from where he's just running like he always does. But in my opinion, he was much more decisive, much more powerful when he got to any kind of like contact situation, and it showed. And you're right. I mean, I know Ole Miss had a hell of a start last week. I don't know what they did today, but there's no way you don't miss a guy like that.
No. And Ohio State is really glad to have him. You know who else Ohio State's really glad to have him? You mentioned him a little bit ago, partner. Man, can we talk enough about Jeremiah Smith? So last week was impressive enough, the 2 touchdowns, but you hear the speed numbers and you're like, okay, that's fine, but we got to see it in a game. And then he catches a 10-yard pass in the first drive of the game.
Just like Carnell Tate last week.
Yeah, well, he catches a pass on the first drive of the game, and he just kind of falls down. And then they run the exact same play, maybe a drive later or 2 drives later, and instead he just decides to, you know what, I'm going to go score a touchdown on this. He turns, and there are 4 Western Michigan defenders right on his tail, and he just burns them all to the end zone, turns on the afterburners. just the most impressive thing. It was like he was Lightning McQueen or something. Like,
that's
ka-chow,
right.
Jeremiah Smith.
That's right.
That
He's
is,
also fast.
it's crazy how good he was. 5 catches, a $119 and a touchdown. Emeka Ibuka, 5 catches, 98 yards.
Yeah.
Those two are the bona fide, no questions asked, top 2 receivers on this team. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say that Jeremiah is the second receiver on the team because he's that good right now. He's one of the best freshmen I've ever seen. Stephen Means and I in the press box, he's right behind us now. We're trying to figure out the best freshman ever. And, obviously, like, there's a long way to go now, but I don't know if there is. He's
best
really,
freshman what?
he's really good.
Best freshman
Period,
what?
I guess.
Period, ever. Just best freshman.
Orlando Pace.
Okay, we're not getting
was
into
a
that.
hell of a freshman.
We're not getting into that right now. I'm just saying, like, we're not that far off because if he's got 3 touchdowns already in this.
Yeah, but I'm talking about Orlando Pace
Yeah,
was the most impressive freshman I ever saw.
We'll get into that later.
Yeah, Jeremiah Smith is fantastic. The receivers overall today were really good. Brandon Innes had a great 27-yard catch on a great throw from Devin Brown late in the game. The tight ends were more involved in the pass game. I thought they had a really well-designed play for Will Kacmarek to convert a 3rd down early in the game where he motioned pre-snap, then reversed back the other way. It was wide open in the flat, 1st down. I thought in general, Chip Kelly was even more creative this week than he was last week, unfurled that play sheet a little bit more. We saw a lot of tight ends and a lot of heavy sets, so 13 personnel, 14 personnel. And that's cool to see because we saw that from him at UCLA, and now we're starting to see that at Ohio State like we expected, but didn't see as much of that last week. But yeah, man, 5 quarterbacks played tonight, including Mason Maggs, the walk-on, who got a carry at running back where we saw him in the spring game as well. So 5 quarterbacks, count them, including Julian Sand, who threw his first career touchdown pass.
Yeah, and here's the other thing Ohio State definitely benefited from. Bowling Green went into Penn State today, led them at halftime, and had a shot at an upset. Northern Illinois from the MAC went into Notre Dame today and pulled the upset. Right on down the line, there were some interesting moments in college football during the day that, I really didn't ask the players whether they were paying attention to it or not, but you let your guard down a little bit. This was a team that took, like we said, Wisconsin to the 4th quarter and had the lead last week that Ohio State played tonight. And Ohio State destroyed this team. So this is a team, Ohio State, that was quite focused, like Ryan Day kind of alluded to. They were quite focused from beginning to end. I'm telling you, this is a special football team. They know, like Ryan Day's thing about leave no doubt. They left no doubt tonight. Now, the uncool thing is they'll probably drop in the polls, because let's face it, Texas' win at Michigan, even though we know that's not Michigan from last year, right?
Yeah.
Of course it's not, but it definitely is not. Might elevate Texas, to number 2. I think you got to get ready for that. No, I don't think they supplant Georgia. Georgia beat a really, really good Tennessee Tech team today. but it's too bad because this was almost as thorough a football game as you can put on that Ohio State put on tonight. And I know who the opponent was. I know where they're from. I know they were 38-point underdogs, but they got beat twice that bad.
Yeah, this was, again, as thorough.
It sounds like we're campaigning for Ohio State.
No.
We just saw something really special.
Yeah, it's
in my opinion tonight.
It's as thorough as it gets, and I'm very impressed with what we saw from Ohio State on Saturday night here in the Horseshoe. The fun thing is we get to talk about this team for 2 more weeks before we get to see them play again because they're not going to play next week for some reason, and then they're going to play Marshall, and then they're going to play at Michigan State. So we're going to have a lot to break down here. Tim's going to get to talk about the rest.
So Larry, we're coming on Monday morning.
We will be in here on Monday morning for the Monday after. Ohio State 56, Western Michigan nothing. Kind of starting to feel a little bit like 2019 where the opener against FAU didn't really go as they planned. 45-21. Last week, the opener against Akron didn't really go as they planned. Guess what? They come back the next week, and it's a shutout. 5 years to the day since the last shutout. The Buckeyes do it again in this very building in front of 101,000+ people. Tim May, the 41-year vet, was among them. Andy Backstrom, he was among them. Same as me, Spencer Holberg. The Horseshoe is empty now. It's going to be empty on Monday, but we'll be in here to talk about it on the Monday after Ohio State 56, Western Michigan nothing. Go to LettermenRow.com. Until then, get all of that coverage that you so crave. We'd love to have you in there at LettermenRow.com and the Lettermen Lounge message board. For Andy, for Tim, I'm just Spencer. It's getting a little chilly. It's getting really late. We got to get to bed so we can provide all that content over at LettermenRow.com. Like the video below. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Helps us out a lot. Head to LettermenRow.com. We'll see you guys over there. We'll see you back in here on Monday to break down the Buckeyes.